Okay, please come to class. Sit up straight. Remove your glasses, close your eyes. Draw your spine up tall. Release the length of the bones. That means the long bones, they do release their length away from the root in the spine, in the neck, at the skull. You also have to lengthen the spine as if it were, well, what it is a connected series of many bones, each one of which has to lengthen. So you can feel it as the whole of the spine lengthening. And as you get more sensitive, you can feel each segment. Join your palms. And observe the even inward and outward flow of the breath. Up and down the length of the trunk, including the neck, ears, jaw, that region, all the way down the chest, collarbones, the sternum, heart, the diaphragm, solar plexus, navel, pelvis. Find the parallel lines there. They parallel the spine, but they're like on the sides of it. So those lines are unlike the spine in that they are elastic. They go through organs, they're in front and beside the spine. And they are constructed of your sensations, your imagination, your breath. They aren't just body. These lines are felt, understood, moved, influenced by your body and its position, your senses and mind, your breath, observe these lines. In this way, we begin our practice, paying homage to it and to that root teacher, Patanjali. Bow your head. Release your hands. Raise your head, open your eyes. Change the crossing of the legs, other shin first. Sit up straight. Use your hands on your support to create a kind of mechanical lift for this trunk. And then just breathe up and down. So you don't have to go all in for these particular lines, but you've got to feel the breath up and down the length. So you feel there's a vertical component to the movement of the breath. There is simultaneously some kind of lateral movement to that breath. There are two components. There's a third and a fourth. The third is depth, front to back. Do you feel the breath in the skin of your abdomen? Do you also feel the breath in the skin of your back? How deep does that breath feel? Take your arms up, or the hastas. Keep breathing. First thing that happens for some of us is our sensation of the breath gets kind of chased out by the sensation of the arms. If you have trouble with this, take, sorry, cat toy, take some kind of support, a stick, a belt, anything, make it easier on the arms. Feel these lines again. Length, the length of the breath. How deep does that breath go? You could also interlock your fingers, but I'm making it just sort of easy. If you want to go to Badanguliasana, please do. Cultivate length and width. Now, the abdomen is one thing, but we say these lines, this lateral and longitudinal freedom comes into the neck, throat, jaw, chest, sternum as well, all up and down, diaphragm. Where these come out? Oh, those in Padanguliasana, of course, you got to change. Now, do that for a few moments. Go up again, everybody. Everybody. Now, I will suggest some of you with trouble finding the lines in the neck, let the head come forward and see if that gives you any more clarity. Stretch the arms, let the head go forward. Everybody should experiment that way. Arms up, you don't lose the verticality of the arms, and anything in the spine below the neck. Stretch your elbows. Elbows, the long bones lengthen, come out now. Adho Mukha Virasana to Adho Mukha Svanasana. You will, as usual, take your toes together, knees apart. And in this Virasana shape, all by itself, not even, going further, you might notice that this column of breath feels different down in the pelvic region, just because of the change in position. Both the width, the lateral breath, and the longitudinal breath. So as you go forward, observe when you fold, frequently those lines shrink, compress, support your head, support the thighs, press with the palms, extend through the arms, use the arms, and adjust the inner length of the legs in such a way that you get that breathability. Now, if you get lazy with the arms, everybody don't irritate your shoulder joints, but just relax the arms, let the elbows bend, let the spine relax, let yourself just drop like you're suddenly asleep, and see what the lines do. Then reconstruct the activity of the pose. So it is strictly in order to open those lines. And I'll tell you, if you irritate your shoulder joints or neck joints, you'll sort of immediately lose the lines. At least the mind will be distracted from them. So keep breathing those lines. They are constructed of bodily sensations, breath, mind, intellect, imagination. Now, you're going to come up to Adho Mukha Svanasana with the same sense of awareness. Don't move fast, but you can move as smoothly as you like. Those with stiff shoulders, you might put a strap on your arms. You might raise the hands or do this pose with the hands on a chair. Come up, lengthen the bones, arm bones, leg bones, spine and pelvis bones. Even the skull bones. Let your skull bones expand, long, wide. Locate and work your pose to release that breath. Lengthen the shins, lengthen the thighs, lengthen the arms. Apply your mind to your senses. Exhaling, inhaling. You can feel those lines change as you exhale, as you inhale. As you inhale, the lines deepen, widen, lengthen. As you exhale, it's kind of interesting. If you exhale forcefully, the lines sharply contract and you can control. Usually it's the width that contracts. Come out, rest. And it'll be the width in the pelvis that contracts when you exhale. Sit up straight, just in this position. You can have your knees apart or together, don't strain. Now, widen those heels. And if you need to, put a blanket in place to, if you feel like you're sitting too low. Okay, toes together, heels apart. And the knees can be a bit wide, not super wide. Breathe. You should feel this bowl. Let your knees come apart a little bit, everybody. So you get some width across this base of the pelvis. Okay. I'm just making sensations here. All right. Stand up, Tadasana. Plain old Tadasana. Now, if start lazy, right? Start just standing there like you're at the supermarket, right? Then observe your breath this way. I'm not going to tell you what you perceive, but I'll tell you what I perceive when I'm just sort of resting is there's no breath in this lower part. Yeah. I've got breath here. I've got some breath here. It's not great, but it's present. That's I'm alive, but I don't really feel it here. Now, if I build this pose, start stretching the legs, whether they're joined or slightly apart, line up with those hips. If you push your thighs forward, watch the breath. If you move those thighs back, watch the breath. Go for a Tadasana that brings you depth and width and length all the way up. So you can't necessarily work hard at this. Some of you do. Some of you have to break through stuckness. Some of you have to breathe harder, get some more velocity in your exhalation, generate sensation. Okay, take the legs apart. First, get a chair. Put it to your right. So you're going to do Trikonasana, taking your hand to a height, this chair. If you're more flexible, you can go to your elbow on the chair, and it's like taking your hand to your ankle or a low brick. So the chair is versatile this way. Take feet apart. Using the chair, you need your foot kind of underneath the chair, or your elbow won't be able to come down on it. You've got to adjust so you're under the chair a bit. Stand. And kind of quiet things down. So you're observing that breath and those lines. The posture of the legs causes these lines to feel naturally wider. You preserve the length. You preserve the depth. Stretch your arms. Turn to the right. Bend from the hips. Bend, feeding the length of the legs to the hip socket, so you can keep the length of the groin, bearing weight on the hand. Lengthen the groins. Stretching through the legs, rolling the left thigh away from the right, lengthening the right groin away from the abdomen, the lines spread. Go farther out, those who can. Take a longer stance, those who can. Do all of this to open and preserve the ease of breath all the way to the corner of this groin. Don't shorten. Don't close off the breath. At the other end, don't close it off at the neck and skull. Inhale, come up. Either move your chair, have a second chair, or feel free to turn around and show me from the back. The backside gives me quite an itch. If I were in a room with you, I would be walking around the room to see all sides of you. So it's nice if you show me different sides also. In this Zoom context, it helps. So turn around if you like. Or imagine me walking around behind you and visualize yourself and how the pose is going. Okay, stretch your legs, turn those legs, stretch your arms. Bend from the hips, watch those lines. You got to bend more from the hips, Karen. Take a wider stance. Yes, that's looking better. Yes. You feel it. Adjust your pose for the hip. Lengthen the pelvis bones. Right? This is what the teacher would see from the back, from that left hip blade to the left buttock bone, back and forth, both directions, you must lengthen toward the joints. That's toward the lumbar spine, toward the buttock bone, hip socket. Lengthen. Now stretch the thigh bone. Lengthen, lengthen your stance. Anybody who feels like there's any room at all to widen should widen. Karen, if you can go farther without irritating those joints, you should. I mean, wider legs. Leanne, stretch that knee. Stretch that left knee. It changes the hip. Keep observing from the point of view of the breath. Now, stretch your arms and carefully come up. You can push with that arm and pull, push with the legs. Turn the feet, come out. Now, we're going to make a big experiment for which this is why I asked you to collect props. This is 3 blankets folded, sitting on top of my chair. And that's not enough. I've got to get some more. And if I can't get it enough height from blankets, then I go to the couch and I get a couch pillow and I make a big stack. A giant stack. Now, look, I also have this thing called the platform. And this height is about the height of that stack of blankets. It's this high. It's I don't know, it's a low table. It should actually be higher. It should be the height of a regular table. That's what we're trying to build, if you see this. Yeah. I'm trying to get up that high. Now, you could get, if you had a stool that had the proper room, you could use it. You got to watch. I have to get my foot underneath. Look how far in under the table it's going. I'm on my one good ear here, so I rest on my head. I rest my head. That's the point of the height. Longer stance, Chaya. Widen your back leg away. Yeah. Fold up that blanket. The deal is your head has to genuinely rest. So Pratima, widen your stance. If at all possible, get your back heel to the wall. Brace that back heel on that baseboard. No, not up it, on the floor at the baseboard, right. So that's your maximum in that direction. Now move your chair a little bit forward. Yeah. And lengthen that trunk. Do you feel? Get some more extension. Take the most extension. Good. I see you supporting your head. This is fine vidya. Be lateral in the pose. Turn your right foot there, Cliff. Turn your right foot totally parallel to the sticky mat. Yes. There you go. Now I'm assuming if you get this right, your spine can rest and the breath changes and becomes much more penetrating. If you get the support right, you can stay here for minutes and minutes. I'm not going to keep you minutes and minutes, but I want you observing the lines, depth, width, length. The fourth dimension is time. That breath gets, as it gets quieter and more penetrating, it should slow down a bit too. Now, come up and you take whatever support you need to come up, bring the feet together, stand in Tadasana for a few moments, and then change sides. Now, it is possible, and I was originally taught this way, to turn the chair around and hang the blanket over the top of the chair back. The reason I'm not doing that is because some people have a bar across this back of the chair that's too low down for this stance. A good, flexible, long Trikonasana person is not going to bruise a shin. You may need to pile extra blankets up on the back of the chair. Don't use just that height. piling up stuff on the, you got to turn that chair around now. That's it. And when that bar is high up the back, you bring your shin almost up to it. Now, Pratima, you might have to move that forward chair away from you. It's to go underneath your skull and put your hand, Leanne, on the chair seat underneath that blanket. That's it. And the base of the skull. There you go. Now, shorten or lengthen your stance, Leanne. Find a way of being comfortable. I would shorten it. Move your back foot forward. That's it. Okay. Is that better?
Yeah, feels good.
Yeah, good. Chaya, you should get longer. I think you should lengthen your stance. Yeah. So it may be, yeah, so you really must extend. Watch those lines. Okay, you need to bring your shoulder back so it's in line with your standing leg, your left leg. Your shoulders and head should line up on top of that leg. Chest open, throat lines open, base of the skull lines open. Now come up carefully, use the arm for support. Now, this one is actually oddly a little more difficult. Well, right side first. If you take support higher than this chair seat, it's forward bent. Put the support going sideways, wide side going across the chair, because you also want your arms supported. So broad support, not just narrow. So it is Parshvottanasana. And you've got to make it so that your forehead rests on your support. If you're flexible, you don't need all this stuff. If you're less flexible, you'll, as before, you'll need more stuff.
Yes, you do.
Okay. Right foot forward, left foot back. Be up tall at first. Straight arms, straight legs.
Where's the hands?
And let's wait for everybody. In the meantime, you waiting here to see the distance between my feet is pretty long. Lift the ribs away from the hips, stretch the legs toward the feet. Study everything from the point of view of whether it restricts or frees the pelvic breath, abdominal breath, chest breath, throat, head. You go forward, taking the arms forward, the hips back, rest your head on that bolster or blankets. Now, this is a subjective experience. Yeah, can you give Cliff a bolster across the chair seat? That's it. And Cliff, stretch your arms up on top of that Going, yes, to the chair top and even beyond, head down. That's it. Stretch your arms, stretch your legs, observe the lines. Everybody will observe that that right side hip, right front hip is short, pinched. Some of you don't feel the line at all in the pelvis. Others, it just feels short, all the way up to the ribs. So I'm going to say first, lengthen your bones, stretch the leg. First legs, then use the breath, the mind, imagination, intellect, and use your senses and your muscles and your breath to lengthen that outer pelvis, the pinched outer length of the hip, make it longer. The side of that, if you're getting particular ilium bone, your hip blade, make it longer. And see how making that outer hip blade longer helps the breath to even out. Steer the left hip around, back leg hip around, so that it gets even with that long front hip. Use your exhalations more vigorously to fix these last bits of resistance. Lengthen that hip, use that breath. It is a tool. Now, come up, stand straight, feet together, Tadasana. Let this register, see what the two sides of the abdomen feel like. Do they still feel short? Are you more aware of them? What has changed? There's so many things that could change sides. Depth, width, length, duration. The last one, the one that really reflects the state of things, is duration. When that breath is able by itself to get long and smooth. Stay up tall first, square the hips. Cut to the chase. Make sure that outer left hip blade is long. Make sure the long outer right hip that you just worked on matches the left. Then you go forward. Watch the line, the breath line. The inhalation is going to reveal to you the width and depth and length. It's going to reveal to you the balance, right, left, top, bottom, front to back. Stretch your leg bones. Pratima, take your right heel all the way to the wall, not up the wall, just brace there. You're taking the longest pose you can take. Stretch those legs, stretch that spine, stretch the lines. Come up. Adho Mukha Svanasana. You can work with your hands on a chair braced at the wall. You can work on the floor. Take a symmetrical forward bend. Watch your lines. Lengthen the outer pelvis bone. Exhale sharply. And sharply just means more intense in your terms. That means increase the velocity of the breath. This makes it easier for you to observe what body parts you're employing to make this exhalation. You want to ultimately employ those lines and the strength that is represented in those lines. So when you exhale, those two parallel lines come closer to each other. When you inhale, they expand. So when you increase the velocity of the breath, the lines move a bit more. And if you really complete the exhalation all the way, those lines seem to converge at the pelvic floor. And as you inhale, they widen out again. So you get this sense that your exhale almost funnels the breath toward the pelvic floor. Come out. I gotta move the camera. You're gonna sit on the floor with some blankets, enough to support you. We're gonna do some seated forward bends, which means those among you stiff and forward bending might want to keep this chair because it's a good support for the head, or a chair and blankets, chair and bolster. You need the support you would usually use for Janu Shirshasana, that is this pose. Janu is knee, Shirsha is head. It's this head of the knee that is being referred to. So that chair would be in front of you, not to the side, or a bolster. Okay, so sit Dandasana with the feet running parallel hip width so they won't be joined, not just yet. And take support with the hands. And do your thing to widen these lines. Do what you can to lengthen this outer hip from the hip socket, which is down here, to the top pelvis up here. Make this longer. That means this thigh bone has to really move down. And you can't get crunchy and bunchy right here in the crease of the hip. You can't do that in this pose. You have to lengthen that front hip blade up and move the thigh down. This is difficult. but use your hands for support and it gets a little easier. Now release that breath. Don't do it with the breath. Do it with the arms and legs and receive it with the breath. Let that breath reflect. So these lines should become more tangible if you get the arms and legs right. Bend your right knee to the side. Go back to symmetrical arm support. The breath is now different, right? Those lines. For everybody, the right side line, the whole feel of this pelvis is spread off to the right. Okay. For some of you, and I venture to say all of you, but I won't make assumptions like that, this side has somehow gotten short. It's not just short relative to this side, it's now holding some tension. So get that length back. Use your leg. Use this leg. Lengthen it, ground it, pick up the trunk. So that's one thing. This line has to come back. This line is a distraction. It got moved. This line, give it back its length. Come forward. Catch your foot if you like, if you can. Strap. Bring the chair in if need be. This kind of interferes with your view, but you bring the chair in, put the hand on top, and same thing. It's like catching your foot, but a little more support. Opposite hand, bent leg hand catches the foot.
That's right.
Observe the lines. The left line is getting squinched again. Bring it back. Bring back the left line length. Any amount you go forward, keep that left line to the left and long. Go any amount forward. Breathe easily. Length, width, depth of those lines, the connectivity all the way to the skull. And the last one is duration in time. Those lines, just like in a more forceful exhalation that we did earlier, you can use them to drive energy toward the pelvic floor. If you support your head the way we worked in Trikonasana, if you give your head a resting place here, you will have an easier time organizing that breath in the pelvis. So a bolster, a chair, a blanket, or any combination of that. Yeah, put the bolster in there, Pratima. Make it so you don't force the head down. The head should rest. This is how you use the posture to heal. Come up slowly, carefully. Sit there, just in this starting position. and observe, and then come out and reset yourself in this Dandasana before you change sides. And most of you, the ones whose knees I can see, you're doing fine, putting some support under the knees. Most of you, the knee sits well. So if you need a brick or something to give, what you're trying to do is work with reference to the breath. So if this leg is suspended, there is some restriction here. If this hip can genuinely rest, that breath can fill this available space. I mean, you can even see from the way my shirt moves. You can see the draw right to this side. This is a simplification of what's going on in the inner body. That prana is being drawn. So question is are you robbing this side? Don't rob the straight leg side. Come back to the width here and lengthen. And if you see it, watch this. This is pretty cool. It actually look, my wrinkles in this shirt increase. That means there's more spreading. There's more length. Now the inner body doesn't look like this. The inner body is actually spreading more square than my shirt shows. Get back the width, get back the length, then come forward. What's going on here? The width is being lost, the length is being lost. Get it back, get the depth back. That's the third element. And it shows up after length and width. Make sure this outer right hip is long. Outer right waist is long. Catch with two hands. Get your support for your head. Chair, bolsters, blankets, whatever you need. Work from and for and with this breath. Arms and legs, bones, imagination.
Devon,
Yes.
When I'm in this position and going forward, I have a real uncomfortable stretch. Can you see? Like right here.
At the top of the knee. Something is not happening in the hip.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah.
So make sure that thigh can freely lengthen toward the knee, and the part of the hip that's attached right to that thread that goes to that knee, that part has to be able to, they've got to be able to stay away from each other, to stay independent of each other. So yeah, I see you pushing that thigh sort of backward.
Yeah.
Right? External rotation.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So analyze what's happening at the hip. And then you got to analyze the right hip. And if pulling your right hip free made the left hip squinch, don't do it that way. Move your right hip independent of the left hip. That's net gain, net widening. Get some depth to it and you'll keep the back hip down. Is it working?
It is, yes, it's working.
All right, it's getting freer. Good.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Now take support for the head. And you can do perhaps better, it'll be informative.
Sorry, one more question. So should I have my head straight on like this or on my leg?
Well, until you resolve the hip, you work from the hip point of view, but classically your head should be on top of your shin. It could even be to the right of your shin. That's also part of the pose. I mean, it's a variant. But I'm saying whatever your head position is, do it from the point of view of the breath lines.
Okay.
Come out. So how you doing? How's your breath? How's your attention? Get 2 bricks, have a blanket as a support for your head. I think 2 bricks is good. 2
Devon,
bricks, yes.
when you're doing this posture, do you feel the lines even on your back?
Not at first. And if you know me, you know I've got a little bit of scoliosis. So my left side is a bit concave. I don't know if you can see it in profile, but this side goes back. This side goes forward, right around here and up a bit higher, but here. So when I do Janu Shirshasana on this side, this back pushes back much farther and this side collapses in much quicker. So when I do the pose deeply, you can see this is up and this is down. When I change sides, does it not look more even?
Yeah, it does.
So the nature of the pose is going to stretch those 2 lines differently. What you try to do is even them out. So the thing that helps my scoliosis, which shows up more on this side, right? This is the side where I'm already collapsed in. This line collapses in. I don't get width easily in this side of me, which is my left. It looks like you're right. So what I do in these poses, and you'll see it, I roll a blanket and I put it in that crease. And when I go forward, I pull the line and pull it. See it without this support.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
See it with, and see it with traction.
Amazing.
Yeah. So Devon, when you do a back bend,
Point being,
sorry.
you do want those lines parallel, but everybody's body is different. And everybody, when I do it on the other side, I don't do it that way. My lines don't need that help. I can do it differently.
Yeah.
So everybody's body is different and everybody's flexibility is different. So, you know, you can only do what I do it. You can get your trunk down where you can pull on it with the blanket. But if you're up here, this pose works. See how I'm turning, I'm getting that line to move.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Setubanta without a cat. Yeah, baby. You need some bricks or 2 bricks and a bolster, 1 brick and a bolster. You need something broad to support your feet. That's why I say a bolster. But this is me piling up blankets because it's right nearby. 3 high might give you the height of a bolster. Then you need 1 or 2 bricks. This is your comfort. You might also need a blanket to be comfortable under your shoulders. So again, bolster or folded blankets, 2 bricks for under the hips, and something to make your head come. Let me also say, the usefulness of putting height under the shoulders. See how I'm now piled up to 2. And now I'm going to replace what's under my feet with a bolster. The usefulness of putting height here is it makes it easy to stretch the legs. It takes some of the depth of the curve out of the body. Okay, Ruby. Time. You go to that side. That support raises my shoulders, and I put 1 brick or 2. This is your choice. 2 is broad and very secure underneath your sacrum. Then stretch your legs out. This, if you see it, it's not a huge back bend. Doesn't have to be. But what needs to happen is your legs need to straighten. Your collarbones and pit of the throat needs to open. Those lines need to be able to lengthen, widen, and deepen.
Below my crack. Or no, where the crack starts.
The base of the, yes, the lower end of the brick goes to the tailbone. The upper end is wherever it goes, up the sacrum toward the lumbars, but the lower end. Now, some of you need to push that support so it is under the heels, not just the ankles. Putting it under heels and ankles is good, but definitely heels. Let your elbows bend, let your arms come out to the side so you get a very broad chest. Go for the lines. You can't go for them unless you're comfy. So I'm was setting you up for comfort. Length, width, depth. lengthening the arm bones and the leg bones is going to immediately affect the lines. Lifting the ribs using the shoulder blades. You got to go all the way up and down the length of those lines. This means you got to feel the width, groin to groin, left and right side of the navel. If it bothers you to keep your legs stretched, by all means, bend your knees, put your feet on the floor. If this is trouble, put your feet on the floor, and otherwise keep that pose. Widen the diaphragm, widen the back of the diaphragm, right where the ribs and spine and diaphragm meet in the back body. That diaphragm is anchored in with ligaments to the front of the spine. So let that back attachment of the diaphragm spread. Collarbone spread, armpit spread. Jaw hinges spread. As the inhalation moves, it doesn't have to like physically push your whole body around, but it's got to be felt in the groins. In the groins of the upper leg, it should be felt. Not just the like to the bladder, let it go beyond, connected to the leg itself. Everybody bend your knees, put your feet flat on the floor. Keep that sacrum at rest, breath at rest. Can you leave your left foot flat on the floor and draw the bent right knee up in the air? Don't straighten the leg, just bend the knee, bent, knee bent, knee bent. You're up on your brick, one leg down, right knee bent. Okay, lift your ribs, lengthen the leg. The right side line is different from the left side line. Those who want to re-stretch the left leg, keep the right knee bent, folded. Bend the left leg, come down with the right foot to the floor. Get yourself square and bend the left knee, fold it up. Lift your ribs. Lengthen the abdomen. Lengthen the thigh. Drop and lengthen and widen the lines. Then stretch your right leg if you wish. Several breaths, then bend the knee, lower the other foot. Be there for a few moments. And then come out. Lower the hips. So Chaya, this is really good. You came up on a tall brick. You often take less than a tall brick. And so I'm happy. This is the way then. Raise those shoulders, raise the hips, but that height feels different, does it not? Than just being on like low bricks. Being higher up is just different, even when the whole pose is set higher. Shoulders, feet, and hips. Please take Shavasana. You may, of course, bend your knees if there is some stiffness. I hope there is not, but if there is, bend your knees. Now, whatever your position, see that the buttocks are long. And broad. Low back, long, broad. Shoulders, long, broad. Neck, long, broad. Let those shoulders be on the floor, okay? And just the head on that blanket support. So you can feel in the inhalation and exhalation. This kind of transition. The air flows in. And hopefully it's still connecting everywhere. Down to the groins. Up to the skull. Out to the arms, out to the feet. And you exhale. And there is this movement of the air out. So the movement of the air in goes everywhere. The movement of the air out goes everywhere. Meaning it's not just your lungs that exhale, but the pores of the skin. The inhalation and the exhalation are this exchange. And your body is like a filter. You inhale that breath, and the life force it carries is able to, if you keep those lines open, the breath then has access. As you exhale, the prana is distributed everywhere. Inhalation takes prana in. Exhalation moves prana through. So that's pranically. In just air terms, inhalation takes air in and holds and brings it into the lung. And the exhalation empties the lung, empties you of air. It doesn't empty you of prana, it empties you of air. So you can examine these processes, you can feel them with, again, your body and senses and mind, intellect, imaginations, and breath. Air comes in, air goes out, prana comes in, prana is filtered and distributed on the exhalation. Bring yourselves back. And it is time for class to end. So even though we did asana, this was pretty much entirely about the breath. I hope you're okay. Namaste.